Hello. Hi there. Hi, this is John Barton, JB Cases, but this is a video about center to edge aiming. I'm doing it live because that way I don't have to worry about the length of the recording. So I know it'll probably come out crappy later, but actually I want to try something real quick. I want to see if I can adjust the Guess not. All right. Oh, here we go. All right, what do we got here? Oh, wrong way. Sorry. It's on the other side there. Mute microphone, share. Okay, we don't want any of that. So, all right. So I hope you guys can hear me. Hope I'm not just doing this all for nothing. Okay. So here's the deal. This is more discussion on center to edge aiming. This is going to be really boring. So if you're not into center to edge aiming, please just don't watch it right now. But this is a rebuttal to some of the things that Justin Marks asserts, claims, says about center to edge aiming. Justin is a good player. He's like 600 speed Fargo player, so a decent player. 620, I think, 630 maybe. And he's an analytical person. And he's also kind of anal, and he likes to debate and he likes to argue. And he considers himself to be a very logical person. So this is not an attack on Justin's character at all. This is just a rebuttal, as best I can do it, of some of the claims and things that he said about center to edge aiming that I find are not accurate or not true or mischaracterized for a variety of reasons. Now, he claims that he's studied everything about center to edge aiming that's available. He has never shown any ability to use center to edge aiming. So he's never shown that he actually understands how to do the steps and how to apply them. So when he critiques center to edge aiming, when he makes observations or he makes assertions, I don't think it's from a standpoint of having actually used the system and then being able to go through and dissect it and make a credible claim based on any part of the system. So the big debate got started was which is better, ghost ball or center to edge aiming. So ghost ball, as we know, is the easiest concept in the world to explain to someone where they should send the cue ball to when they're trying to pocket a ball. And this relates to when you're trying to pocket a ball directly into a pocket. So the ghost ball, of course, is an invisible ball that sits opposite of the pocket, touching the object ball, which would then give a contact point where the cue ball should contact the object ball. This then will send the object ball towards the pocket. Now, there's a phenomenon called cut-induced throw, which is basically that when the cue ball contacts the object ball on a cut shot, the two balls for a moment will stay together and they will move together for just a fraction, just a millisecond. And so the object ball won't go exactly down the ghost ball line. Instead, it will veer, away from that line in the direction of the force. So that's called cut-induced throw. So when you use ghost ball, typically what you should do is you should aim for a little bit of an overcut to compensate for that throw. So you would imagine the ball, if you're going to imagine it, to not be directly in line with the pocket, but instead ever so slightly towards you in the direction of the cut. in order to compensate for the throw. Well, of course, this then, introduces several different variables about, what are the condition of the balls. Are they waxy? Are they freshly cleaned? Are they dirty? Is there moisture in the air, or is the air dry? Is the table dirty? So things like that. And that determines then, of course, how whether or not you should be closer to the actual ghost ball line, to the pocket, or how much you should be that line to compensate for that. So, I think you're getting the picture here that that's a lot of things to think about. Now, generally people would they pretty much just imagine the ball and kind of feel their way through. If they know the table condition, if they're a halfway decent player, they pretty much lock into, what the table is doing. But that doesn't mean they can do it every time. And that doesn't mean, they may have a lapse, or their subconscious may not, snap to it. So, it's a variable that has to be dealt with. People will say, well, you know what, just get on the table and hit a million balls. HAMB, HAMB. You hear that a lot. Hit a million balls and you never have to worry about it. Your aim comes instinctively with that sort of that level of dedication. You're just getting on the table for hours and hours, and you just hit a million balls, and that's what it's going to be. So you won't have to worry about aim. You'll have it. You'll have your stroke down. The aim will come naturally with time, table time, and you just won't have to worry about it. Now, I've said in previous videos, that might very well be true. You could lock yourself in a basement, and nobody could ever, you could lock theoretically, you could lock yourself in a basement, or in this building right here, not have any instruction books. Nobody ever teaches you anything whatsoever. The only thing is the rules. You got a rule book. That's it. There's no instruction book, nothing. So the rules of every game, which basically gives you the task. So let's take 9-ball, for example. You have to run the balls out in order. So you shoot the one in, you have to, execute, and so on. Well, let's, theoretically, the task, make the balls, right? So theoretically, you could just, spend as much time as you need on the table, and you would figure everything out, I mean, you would do one of two things. You'd either figure out how to do the task. So if you went through every game in the book and you were playing by yourself, playing according to the rules, then in order to be successful and run the game out, you would have to discover how to do that, and you would have to figure out with your body how to guide the cue, and you would discover how the balls react and so on. So you'd have to do that, right? The question is that how long will that take? That's at this moment pretty much an unanswerable question, because we don't have anybody that we know of that's ever done that. I mean, we don't have anybody that's ever, as far as we know, locked themselves in with a pool table and not come out until they could, until they were world-class level. So they've not been influenced by anybody else, and all they've had is the balls. So with that in mind, right, we're going to assume that most working people have limited amount of time to practice. So we're not talking about pros here. We're not talking about people who grow up and they're afforded whatever opportunities they need to be able to devote as much time as they can to, looks like I got something on my lip there. It's just a shadow. They're not able to devote as much, like the people who end up at pro class. If you look back at their life, they've generally had, a significant amount of time in their life where they could devote almost as much time as they wanted to towards the pool, learning everything they could and honing their skills. But, normal people like us, we don't really have that time. Or if we do have the time, we generally don't have good relationships, So if you've got a good relationship and you're able to devote the time and you're a working person, then, you. Still though, I don't think that would be an efficient way to learn the game. I think that it would take a lot longer for an individual to discover things that other people have discovered throughout the history of pool, and imparted that knowledge to one another. Okay. So to kind of preface this with the things that Justin says. So the big deal is that most people understand that ghost ball is only a step above pure feel. So if you're approaching a shot and you're not imagining a ghost ball and you're not using any other method of, conscious method of aiming, and all you do is you just look at the balls and you just get down into the shooting position, then you're using pure feel, or even experience. So if you've shot a particular shot 200 or 300 times, and you started out with no particular aiming method, you just basically trial and error, then you're gonna teach yourself how to come into that shot. However, when you move the ball, when you move and you make a slightly different situation, is your ability to get on that perfect shot line using pure feel going to be the same as the shot that you shot 200 times or not? I think there's like 5,000 inches on a pool table. And then every square inches. And then of course, inside those square inches, the ball can be sitting, so there's literally millions of shots on a pool table. I don't know, somebody calculated them sometime, but it's probably 10, 15, or maybe even billions. I don't know, of different combinations of cue ball and object ball. So I think, to be clear, when we say hit 1,000,000 balls, or we say, shoot a shot 200 or 300 times until you got it, we're not talking about, set up 2 balls, shoot that 200 times, then move the balls an inch, shoot that 200 times, and then just keep doing that and keep changing the position of the balls until you've gone through, 1,000,000 different shots. So I think it's clear that, you'd get a feel for, you'd get a feel for the thinness or the fullness of the hit and so on. If you just by your feel method and repetition and trial and error of learning to aim and then execute. So ghost ball, as I said, is a step up from that, right? It's a conceptual method that's easy to draw on paper, easy for anybody to follow, very clear. There's 2 balls stuck together, and if you replace the ghost ball with the cue ball, it pushes the object ball towards the pocket. So in that sense, there is some objectivity more than just feel, because as Justin said, you have a ball, you have the actual object ball to start with, right? I mean, that's what you have to use, that object, to place your imaginary ball, and then get behind the cue ball and shoot into that imaginary ball to make shot. However, and I've made another video on this, I've made several videos on this, the task for using ghost ball is literally to, if not to imagine a full ball there, it's at least to imagine a spot on the table or a contact point where the ghost ball would be contacting the object ball, to find one of those 2 spots spots which don't actually exist because they're not there. They're not marked out. To look at the table and pick out, some spot or area and say, well, that's it, that's what ball center is. Or look at the object ball and fixate on part of it and say that's where the contact point is. Now, as humans, I think that we can intuitively get pretty close to that most of the time. Some with more accuracy, some with less. So it's not to say that can't be done. But other than having that ball there as your reference, and of course the pocket, so you see the line where it's going to go into the pocket. The rest of it is absolute estimation. I don't really believe most people who say that they actually see a fully formed sphere there. I think they kind of just estimate how far away the center of that sphere would be if it were sitting on the table, and they aim the cue ball to that spot. And they may use that in conjunction with the contact point that they think is there on the ball, wherever they think that is. So, that's why there's like 20 different ghost ball trainers out there, 20, 25 different ghost ball trainers that are all designed to help the student or the player refine his estimation abilities, to get a better feel of how his body relates to those shots and find that spot. But those trainers are not with you when you play pool. You can't use them to measure. There's no device that you can put down on the pool table and legally measure, where that ghost ball position is. So you have to hope that you've done enough work and your estimation skills are pretty good to be able to consistently aim correctly using the ghost ball method. So as I said, it's a step above pure feel, which is to say that if you had a spectrum of aiming, of subjectivity versus objectivity, and objectivity, to be clear, is using as many real, visible, tangible reference points as you can to measure with and make a decision with, to orient yourself. So, another way to put this would be, objectivity is having lane markers. You have a 3-lane highway and you have lane markers that clearly, mark out which lane you're in, and you use those markers to keep your car fairly centered inside the lane. And as you look ahead or you look back, you're using those markers again to do how far away, how where the cars are in relation to you. Subjectivity is when you have a highway that's 3 lanes wide, but you have no markers. So it's much harder to keep a safe distance from the cars and to judge where those cars are in relation to you. And I can attest to that because I drove in Turkey where it was like a 6-lane highway with no lane markers. So, imagine LA freeway and no lane markers at all. And so, that's a very subjective, highly stressful situation to drive in. I mean, LA is highly stressful enough and they've got lane markers, right? But imagine going to a place where you got 6 lanes of traffic and tens of thousands of cars, and people are all over the place. So you can imagine how stressful that is to drive, and how much extra focus and extra concentration you need and extra attention you need just to make it from point A to point B without crashing or dying, right? So having lane markers, of course, that you still have to pay attention and focus, of course, but it helps you. It gives you objective concrete, tangible, visible lines to help you focus, so that you don't have to worry about cars coming from every direction, and you can more easily judge width and speed. So that's enough about that. So you understand. So if we had a spectrum of subjectivity in aiming and objectivity in aiming, and at this end of the spectrum at this end of the spectrum is pure feel, absolute subjectivity. I don't, all I do is just jump in with no other and get down on the ball and shoot. And at this end of the spectrum over here is objectivity. Okay, so let's call that over here like you literally had like a laser guidance system, that would lay down a laser line directly where that ghost ball center is, and lay down, like 3 other lines to like on the edges of the ball, so that you're clear that you have your tunnel. You have everything you need to find that spot. You don't have to find it. It's marked out for you, literally. That's objective. That's purely objective. Everything's done for you. You don't even have to do anything else. It's all already measured out. So when you go the pure feel method here, you don't have any way to measure anything. You're not using anything. And if you go all the way over here to this end, you would not have to do anything except execute, because the line's already. So you have to you make no aiming judgment whatsoever. So on this side, you're right, because it's all marked out. And on this side over here, you hope you're right. Okay, so if you've hit your million balls and everything, then chances are, you're going to be right more often than you're not, because you've put in so much time that your body has learned to recognize, and your mind has learned to recognize, the right approximation. And over here, you literally wouldn't have to put in any time learning to aim. There wouldn't be any trial error on aiming, and you could focus so much more on your execution, right? So if both of you at this end, if you hit your million balls, then some part of that million balls would be spent in trial and error learning to aim shots, and another part of that time would be spent learning to execute, or figuring out your stroke techniques and everything for the shots that you're going to take. On this side over here, you would literally have to spend no time learning to aim. Your aim would be all marked out for you, be given to you. That actually might be an interesting tournament, for example. If the aim lines were already marked out, and you could see, well, who executes the best? Nobody has to worry about aim. That would be kind of an interesting experiment. But over here on the fully objective side, that's not going to happen, because when you're playing and when you're in competition, the lines are not marked for you. So you don't know what it is. It's not there. So the more objective a method that you have, though, the more chances you have to be accurate when you get down to shoot. That ought to be unassailable logic right there. Like that ought to be an unassailable conclusion, that the more objectivity you have in the process, the more likely you are to end up with an accurate result. The result being the shot line that you're going to adopt. Now, at this point, I want to say again, aiming is not execution. Okay? So once again, if the line was completely marked out for you, you would still have to physically propel that ball down that line and, make the shot. So if you did anything wrong there, it's very easy to push the cue ball off that line. You will not make the shot. you're unlikely to make it, depending on how far off the line you push the cue ball. So aiming is aiming. That's what you do to decide what line you're going to send the cue ball down. And execution is execution. And both of them are extremely important, right? The one doesn't exist without the other. But you don't want to get into this situation. A lot of people will tell you, well, just hit 1,000,000 balls, focus on your stroke, and the aiming will take care of itself. To a degree, that's true. To a degree, that's true. However, a lot of times you guys might see people with body English. They shoot shots and they twist and they shimmy and all this. Well, it's my opinion that when people develop habits of using body English, it is because they are not aimed correctly. Because if they were aimed correctly and they use body English, they're going to miss the shot. It's that simple. So it's the flip side of having the line. So if I mark the line out for you and then I use a lot of body English, you see me twist and shimmy and all that, it's definitely going to push the cue ball off that line. So the flip side of that is if I'm aimed wrong, and I've got videos on this and I've shown people this, if I'm aimed wrong, but I've taught myself, or I've discovered that if I shimmy just the right way, or I twist just the right way, then it's gonna make that ball go in on that particular type of shot. Then all I've done is I've aimed wrong without knowing it, and I've learned what little helper movement I need to compensate for that wrong aim. But I don't even know that I'm aimed wrong. I think that that's just a great technique to be able to make the shot in that situation. The problem with that is that when the balls move to a different location, maybe I haven't yet figured out the right amount of shimmy or right amount of body English for that particular angle. So obviously, if you have a way to accurately get on the shot line and you can stroke straight, you're going to have the highest chance to consistently make the shot face. So I hope that premise, that logic is not, there's nothing to argue with on that. All right. You would think. So the claim with CTE is that it is very, very, we just say objective. Okay. We don't assign a degree of objectivity to it. We just say it is objective and accurate. So we know that it's accurate, the users, the practitioners of it, because we have tested it. We can see the results. The results being, when we use it, do we get on the shot line or not? That's pretty clear. And then, of course, some practitioners, they have very good strokes, so they don't worry about whether their stroke is right or not. That's not me, for example. I am more of a cheerleader than I am a diligent player who works on his stroke for hours a day. By this time in my life, I should have a good stroke. However, I spent a good portion of my pool life using an awful lot of body English, and I managed to have a decent amount of success with that. But looking back, on it and analyzing it now knowing what I know now about aiming, I understood that any success I had was basically due to brute force, hitting 1,000,000 balls and developing bad habits that resulted in successful outcomes. But then not understanding when I did miss a ball, not understanding why I was missing it, so I just chalked it up to good days and bad days. So, when I learned how to aim objectively and understood that was producing a more accurate shot line, now I personally now had the problem of trying to break those habits of wanting to twist and shimmy and move to spin balls in, using body English. So as a result, when I should have, at that very moment, when I learned how to aim correctly, I should have just spent a lot of time absolutely breaking myself of any chance to not stroke straight through down the line that the system had produced for me. But I didn't do that, okay? So, that's me. There are, however, a lot of center to edge users who do have perfect strokes or laser-like perfect strokes. And as a result, they know for sure that center to edge produces the right line. I know it too, but I have to focus a lot more on the stroke than they do, because their stroke is they don't have to focus on it because it's there. They've done their million repetitions to groove their arm in and make sure their body is still and where it should be. And I haven't. So as a result, and this is going to tie into what Justin said in just a moment, as a result, when I demonstrate centered edging, I know the steps. I don't always apply them diligently. So therefore, it is possible that, I can apply the steps and be off on my aim line, on my shot line. It's possible as well that I can apply the steps correctly and be dead nut straight and have an error and either miss the ball, or I'll make it, but it'll be a sloppy make. It won't be clean. So Justin uses me as an example and asserts, well, when you do that, you always have an excuse. So you never blame the system, you blame yourself, and you won't admit that the system is actually subjective. And because it's subjective, you're subjectively guessing wrong when you miss shots, that it's the actual, because of the subjectivity in the system, that's what's causing you to adopt the wrong aiming line and therefore miss. And so I reject it, okay? Even though there's a tiny bit of subjectivity in one of the steps, even though there is that, but it is, in my opinion, not so subjective that it would cause you to adopt the wrong aiming line. I'll show you that in just a moment. I hope this video comes out okay. It's looking like it's a little stilted here, so I don't know if it's recording correctly, and it's just the YouTube thing is doing that. So, I mean, I got a lot, and I don't have enough memory on the phone to let the video go as long as I need it to go. I can't do short ones. Sorry. So Justin tries to make the argument, and I don't know if he's just being facetious or if he really believes this, if he's just trying to push my buttons. But he's now trying to make the argument that Ghost Ball is completely objective, and therefore, I think he's trying to say it's more objective even than center to edge aiming, because he rejects the idea that Ghost Ball is not as good a method as center to edge aiming is for aiming shots. And now he's trying to advance this premise that because there's a fully formed ball here, because there's a ball sitting there, that it should be easy to imagine another ball in perfect position going into the pocket. And then, of course, you can replace that with the cue ball. However, I want you guys to think about this, and I want you to test this out, right? I want you to go to the pool room next time you go, or go to your pool table, and I want you to place a ball anywhere on the pool table, okay? Then I want you to take another ball and look at the table, look at it, right? Pick a pocket, get behind that ball, and I want you to take that extra ball and I want you to put it down, touching the ball without moving it, without moving the first ball, directly in line, perfectly in line with the pocket that you chose. So you're basically going to treat the other ball as a ghost ball, and you're going to put it down. And then I want you to back away. So you can't adjust it. You have to make a decision. You get one time, you go like this. This is what I want you to do. So let's say, for example, that I've got the 5 and I want to line it up to that pocket right there. Okay? So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take this ball and I want you to go like this. Take as much time as you need to do this, but you've only got one shot to do it. I want you to take it and I want you to get in line and I want you to put it down. Once it touches the table, you got to move your hands. Let it go. Now, you get up here and you look and you see, is this in line with the pocket or not? Now, I didn't deliberately, here, I'm going to move this camera up a little bit. I did not deliberately make that wrong. What I did was, I went like this and I looked at the ball and I looked. And then when I got up here to place it, I'm looking. And I see that I'm off. Okay, so I see that I'm off. You can see that the ball is now pointing that direction. So it's not pointing at the pocket. We could get the laser and I can show you that. But you can do this on the short way too. And you can test it out with your friends, let them do it. But here's what most people do. Here's what happens when you do this exercise. What most people will do, and I'll do it over here so you can see it. What most people will do here is they will do this. Of course, they will get back here and they will look at it, right? Then they'll come up here, they'll put it down, then they'll back away again, they'll look at it, then they'll come back, they'll move it a little bit, then they'll look at it, then they'll move it a little bit, and they'll continually do this until they're positive that they've got it set up, that they've got it in line. So what do you think the odds are that a person is going to stand back here and be able to imagine a fully formed ball in the right spot and then move to the cue ball over here and keep that fully formed ball perfectly there, and then get down where this is when they've got all this other visual information in their field of view, but the task is that they have to be looking at some imaginary ball or a spot on the table here somewhere, that where's the spot right here? What exact spot is it? And what are the consequences if they're a hair off or more one way or the other? How much room for error do they have to within the margin of error going towards the pocket? So I think that Justin is correct when he claims that ghost ball is an objective way to aim. No, it's not. It's not objective. The reference points that you have, you know, the ball sitting there, that's the only tangible thing you've got. Everything else on here is imaginary. You imagine the line coming back through. You imagine the contact point, which, you know, I guess would be right about there, right? You imagine the spot on the table where the ghost ball center would be. You imagine the ball if that's the method that you use. All those things are imaginary. So I don't think that there are many people out there that would take Justin's position and say it's a fully objective way to aim. Okay, it's a conceptual way to aim that is very easy to draw on paper. But the fact of it is that in 2 dimensions, very easy to draw, very easy to show people. And ghost balls are great for showing tangent lines, you know, where the collisions are going to go and so on. There's a lot of use for the ghost ball diagramming, okay? For using ghost balls to diagram. But in practice, it turns out to not be that great of a way to actually aim the balls to the shot line. So, I proposed the thought experiment for Justin. I said, since you think that this is so easy to do, the experiment. So this is a 2.5, 2.5 inch template here. So what I want to do is I want to down a little bit more so you guys can see this. What I want to do is I want to draw a perfect spear touching this right next to it. And I want that spear to be 2.25 inches, and I want the center to be 2.25 inches from there of that other ball, of that other spot, right? So it should be easy because I'm right here, right? I mean, I've got a fully formed perfect circle here, so it should be easy for me to judge well enough to draw a circle right there. So how well I do. Okay. So I'm going to start out right here so I can touch it. All right, let's see how well we did. So now this should be, you know, if I did right, this should be 2.5, 2.25 or 2.25 inches. So let's see how we did. So this is 2, and this is the quarter mark right here. So this is the quarter. So I'm approximately 1/8 of an inch off on that side. How about this side? Let's go this way with it. So this one is about 2 inches. So this is the 2.25 mark right here. So over here, I'll mark this out so you guys can really see it. I'll, you know, so big. We'll make a thick line. All right. So there's that. Now let's look at the 2.25 inches from the center here. Okay, so I'm going to mark a tiny dot right where the center of that is. And we'll measure and see if we manage to get that even on the line. So 1/4 would put the center right there. That's the distance that would be the actual ghost ball center. Okay? But if I were like standing 5 feet back from the shot, what do you think my odds are to actually find that perfectly? Right there. So this is if we go with 2 inches, right? Where am I at here? So 2 inches. So 2 inches puts me right here. So I'll put an X on it so you can see it. So that's 2 inches where the actual center is. So let me explain now. You can go through and you can do this experiment as many times as you want, you know, and you're not going to have accurate results. I already know that. Doesn't matter. That's not going to help you to be better at using ghost ball by practicing that, because it's a, you know, it's a very subjective task. It's hard to do that, to draw a perfect circle, you know, that matches the other circle and so on. So now you're asking a person to do it with a whole sphere here. Let's just look at something here so that we're clear. So the object ball is here, right? Okay. Ghost ball center is right here. This, by the way, is an excellent template from Striking Line Aiming by Gordy Vanderveer. You can look it up online. Striking Line Aiming. Okay, now this is another method. You know, remember we talked about what if you had the lines marked out and everything? This is a whole method of great templates where the lines are marked out and everything. So, you know, if you don't want to use CTE or you don't want to, and you prefer to, you know, go the million balls method, this is a good way to have your template already drawn out for you. This set right here is right here. I mean, he's done a great job with this, and everything is perfectly marked out. So once you got it set up on here, then you know, you can train your vision, and he has an offset called the striking line. Okay, so that's basically an outgrowth of the equal opposite method of aiming. Which is geometrically correct, but it is also subjective in finding those lines. But it is a method that uses the contact point and overlap on the balls to find what would be the contact point on the cue ball, and then you simply go parallel to that line, and and when you push the ball down that line, you should be on the ghost ball line, and it works. But again, to me, it requires something like a template like this, you know, to really kind of hone your skill in seeing that. And without the template there, it still requires a fair amount of subjectivity. So I would call this, you know, like further along the spectrum towards objectivity, but I would not call it objective. Okay, so I would call it partially objective on there, because you're actually learning to use the cue ball, the contact point, and the overlap of the balls to find a line that would be accurate. So as long as you find that line and you move parallel to it, you're going to be good to go. And Gordy's a very good player, very, very good player. So I believe that using like this template will help anybody improve. You know, it will definitely. And he's got a whole bunch of other parts on there that are designed also to help your stroke, help your stance, and your fundamentals, along with, you know, refining your aim. So what I like about this is it allows me, if, you know, even if I don't use it the way that he recommends, it allows me to have everything marked out so I can test center to edge aiming with the lines marked out to see if the steps in center to edge resolve the ghost ball and the ghost ball shot line. And if they do, so if I can consistently get into the ghost ball shot line, then I can be extremely confident that if I take it to this end of the table where there's nothing marked out, that it works. And of course, you know, I know that it does because I've already done that before. So you can find videos where I show that. Okay, but let's continue on with this example here where we didn't find the ghost ball line correctly. And let me show you what it means when you're off by how much. So from the edge there, we would be off by, let's see, we need to be 1 1/8 away from. So we're literally off by almost a 1/4 inch right there. Okay, so let's see what it looks like when you're off by a 1/4 inch away from the ghost ball line. So instead of 1 1/8, we're going to go here and we'll put the ball here. So here's the here's where the 5 ball is going to go. So that's what I would actually be aiming at right there, is that 5 ball if I were using ghost ball. So it doesn't matter. Let me put the cue ball right there. If I were shooting at that 5 ball right there, this is what would happen. Cue ball goes down that line. We're going to replace the 5. It's going to continue on that line, and where it contacts the 13 is right there. Now, does that result in the 13 going in the pocket? No, it does not. The 13 would hit right here on the edge and it would bounce out of this pocket. So that 1/4 inch of miscalculation right there resulted in being outside the acceptable margin of error to make this ball. That 1/4 inch. Now, what if I had been off on the other direction, for example? So what if I had been correct on the distance, but actually I had been off in this direction? Well, that's pretty easy to see, right? Because if I replace the 5 here, see that? I'm still going to miss the shot. Now, there is a margin of error in this ghost ball, so that you've got a little bit of a margin in there. So, if I had been off by that much, say, for example, I'd been off by that much, I might still make the ball there in the side of the pocket. Or going the other direction, I might make it over here. But then again, it might rattle or not go at all. If the pockets are tighter, the margin of error gets even smaller. So that's the problem with the ghost ball method. It's just not objective. It's very subjective, and you can have some measure of success with it, and a lot of people claim that they do. I don't deny that. However, I believe that if we did like some real shot making, I personally believe that the people who just feel it, use ghost ball, however they use ghost ball, are going to be on the lower end of those shot making tests. Their points or performance or whatever in the list, the ranking list. And the people who use more objective methods, they're going to have a higher score on those shot making tests. And as a matter of fact, that's the way it's borne out in some of the shot making tests that are out there, which results in a lot of the higher performers are people who use objective methods of aiming. Okay, so now let's talk about what is objective in center to edge aiming, what is subjective. So the objective part in center to edge aiming are the cue ball, which you can see. You can see the center of the ball where it sits on the table. You can see the edges of the cue ball. The object ball, which you can see the center of the object ball and the 2 edges of the object ball. You can connect the lines with those. For example, if I wanted to hit the 13 dead on, I could just use the two edges of this ball right there and the two centers. So I have 3 lines to align myself to put the cue down right there. And I'm dead on center ball, right? So that's objective. That's easy. Everybody can see that, right? That's nothing to imagine right there. Just connect all those points and you're dead in line with the ball. So in centered edging, you're going to use 2 more points to connect to, and those 2 points are not marked. They're not easy to see. Now I take that back, okay? Let me just be clear about that. They're not marked for you in terms of tangibly being there. So they're like the contact point on the ball. You have to figure out where that is, try to hold it in your mind. Okay, we clear about that? So what that is if you take this ball, you have the bottom part of the ball where it sits on the table is the center. You have the 2 edges, right? So as you're looking at the ball, when you're facing it, you've got an edge here and an edge here and a center. Right there. So with that in mind, you need to train yourself to find the space between the center and the edge. Right here. So for example, here's where you can make some templates or something like that to kind of help yourself. I did these not to help myself find the center and the edges, the quarters. I made these trying to figure out how to use some for diagram